Now we run like our lives depend on it. Because they do.
A lot of people just don't seem to understand the Wii. They complain that there's nothing but exercise, sports, and kiddie games on the system that use gimmicky motion controls just for the heck of it, and then a game like Sin and Punishment Star Successor comes along and it offers a challenging, arcade-style gameplay that never lets up on the action until the credits begin to roll. The worst part is that the game will largely go by unnoticed, and it's only going to be recognized by the hardcore fans who knew about its impending release over 2 years ago when it was first announced. Sin and Punishment Star Successor is actually not a brand new series. It's just that the first game was originally only released in Japan on the Nintendo 64, and many years later to the rest of the world on the Wii's Virtual Console service. The series is developed by Treasure, widely known for their work on games like Ikaruga and Gunstar Heroes. I played the original Sin and Punishment on the Virtual Console, so I knew what to expect from the Wii follow-up. What I got was exactly what I expected. The game is an on-rail shooter, meaning that the game moves you through the game world on its own. You just directly control your position on screen and where you are aiming. A good comparison is just to think of a Virtual Cop or House of the Dead type arcade shooting game, only Sin and Punishment puts you in the third-person view, where you must not only carefully aim your shots, but dodge incoming enemy bullets as well. The main objective is to rack up as many points as you can. The longer you go without taking damage, the higher your score multiplier will be, and this will dramatically increase your score. Dying resets your level score, so in order to get a score to brag about, you nearly have to go through a level unscathed, which is not easy by any means. You can lock on the enemies, but the drawback is that they take reduced damage and your score will not be as high. Also, in some levels, you're able to fire on the ground as opposed to hovering in the air, which also increases your score dramatically. It does not take long to realize that the game is very hectic with the amount of action going on screen. This is not a bullet hell type of game per se, but more of a game that simply never stops throwing wave after wave of giant bosses and enemy fodder your way. There are 7 stages in total, each with its own different theme and unique boss fights. The time it takes to complete a level varies greatly on how many times you die throughout. Since checkpoints are sometimes not given for long stretches of time, you can find yourself stuck in a section of a level longer than you may like. There are unlimited continues, however, to help keep people from aggravating game over screens. In general, though, completing the game will take 5 to 8 hours depending on the difficulty selected and the player's skill. Even when I played on normal, the game continually challenged me by offering unique gameplay ideas that kept things fresh, such as shifting into a side-scrolling horizontal and vertical shooter at times, which was a welcome change. Thanks to the Wii's motion controls, your aiming is as precise and as accurate as you want it to be, so when you die it is entirely the player's fault for not being a second quicker on their reflexes. There are 2 characters to choose from, each with 2 different playstyles. Issa uses a manual aiming system and is able to unleash a single powered-up shot. Kachi uses an aiming system which is helped by some auto-lock, as well as a powered-up shot capable of locking onto 8 enemies at once and killing them, just like in Rez and Panzer Dragoon. I personally chose to play as Issa for my playthrough. And I'll be honest though, in terms of the game's story, it made no sense to me. Right from the beginning, they give you little plot elements to get you going, and you really have no idea what's going on. In the end, it doesn't really matter too much anyway, since the cutscenes are kept to a minimum, and it doesn't make you feel detached from the action for too long. But trust me, you're not missing much if you skip the cutscenes anyway. The story is nothing great. Graphically, the game has a few high points and low points. For one, the game has little to no slowdown at all, which is very impressive for a game that throws dozens upon dozens of enemies at you, each firing their own wave of bullets, on top of speeding down a corridor at top speed. However, the game textures can sometimes be very poor in quality, which is very evident in cutscenes as well, which look downright awful at times. Despite the bad textures, however, the game still uses a wide variety of colors in its levels, as well as some really bizarre and well-crafted enemy and boss designs. And the bosses, they are without a doubt a highlight of the game. There tend to be 2 mini-boss encounters during the stage, and then one final mega-boss at the end, which usually ends up being about 3 different stages of that final boss fight. I find myself looking forward to seeing just what kind of crazy boss the game would throw at me next, and I'll admit I was never disappointed. These boss fights require some really well-timed powered-up shots, bullet dodging, and pattern memorization. I found myself looking forward to see just what kind of crazy boss the game would throw my way next, and I was never disappointed. These boss fights require some really well-timed powered-up shots, bullet dodging, and pattern memorization. Later bosses in the game had me retrying at least a dozen times before I could take them down, but I must say I never got overly aggravated, and most of the time it was my fault. I just had to learn the way that the boss played. And speaking of dodging bullets, that does bring me to one of my biggest complaints about the game, which could be a plus or a negative depending upon how you look at it, and that's the dodge mechanic. By pressing a direction and then the Z button on the nunchuck, you can dodge incoming bullets and the enemies themselves, making yourself invulnerable for a brief period of time. While this is very necessary to keep your score up, I felt that a lot of the game's sequences, especially during the boss fights, relied way too heavily on constantly mashing the dodge button and firing at the same time to avoid taking damage. It would have been nice to see a more distinct bullet pattern from the enemies that could be waved through, in a more traditional sense, rather than just dodging straight through them all the time. Then again, this is not your typical shoot-'em-up game anyway, so take that for what you will. Overall, I did find Sin and Punishment Star Successor to be a really fun arcade shooter, and it definitely deserves to find its way into your Wii library. The current price of $50 though may seem a bit steep for a game you can finish in under 8 hours, but it does offer replay value thanks to its emphasis on the high scores and online leaderboards and 2 characters with different gameplay styles. I had a blast playing through the game, and I hope some of you will at least give it a rent. Just keep in mind that it's a game that's not for everybody, so if you have never played an on-rails game before, let alone a shoot-'em-up, buy Sin and Punishment with caution. However, I still highly recommend it for fans of the genre.
I think that's the last of them. Let's get going.